Welcome everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm Laura Jones, and in this session we're going to be speaking with elite ultra runner Hilary Allen. Hilary, often dubbed the Hillygoat, has enjoyed an impressive career so far with numerous wins and course records, including winning the US Skyrunning Series. Hilary had an excellent 2019 season which included wins at La Sportiva Lavaredo Ultra Trail, Cortina Trail, the North Face Endurance Challenge Chile 80k, and second place at UTMB TDS. She runs for the North Face, Skratch Labs, Jaybird, Swiftwick Socks, iKOR Labs, COROS and Saris. Hilary's a coach at CTS, is 31 years old and lives in Boulder, Colorado. Hilary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So perhaps before we get into the detail, you could tell us a little bit about your background and how your sort of journey into running started.
Yeah, so let's see, it seems like a long time ago, but actually it wasn't so long ago actually that I've been running. So you mentioned my win at the US Skyrunning Series. That was actually my first season of proper trail running. So that was in 2014. So I got into running basically when I was in graduate school. So I'm a super science nerd. I have a master's degree in neuroscience and physiology. So it's basically just like organic chemistry. I was working on biochemistry kind of problems. But it was then that I was really stressed and I needed a break. And I was a tennis player in college, but tennis was becoming a little bit more, it was harder to do. There's like too many moving parts. So I just started running, and I got like kind of hooked up with this running club, which was a bunch of mid 50-year-old women who would run 3 times a week at 5:30 in the morning. And they were like Olympic trail marathoners back in the 80s. So super fast women still, when they're in their 50s. And I just loved it. I just got hooked. And then someone in that group knew about trail running. And I literally, as I was training for my first road marathon, every Sunday was a trail run for a recovery run. And after I ran the first marathon, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm never doing this again. And then I started trail running and just kind of focused on that. And then like literally that was in 2013 when I ran my first marathon. And then 2014, I just completely just started trail running just because I loved it. Yeah. And then fast forward to now, I mean, I found this nickname, this Hillygoat, because I just happen to really like the steep trails. So the steeper, the better. I love going uphill, but at first when I started running, I was super bad at the downhill. But I mean, of course, the more you practice going uphill, you have to practice running downhill. And so that's what led me into skyrunning and just running these more like technical steep mountain races.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. I love that story as well about the running group with the ladies in their 50s and, welcoming you in. And that's everything that is just brilliant about this sport, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, Janie DeLucore, she had the record on the Pikes Peak ascent in the United States on Pikes Peak. So it's like a pretty popular race. It's like super competitive. And she had the record on that thing. And so she it just happened, literally this trail running group or this running group was a mile from my house. And I became like best friends with these women. Like I still talk to Janie, like she was my first coach. Like she's amazing.
Oh, that's lovely. And actually, one of the questions that I've got to ask you a bit later on was who had an influence on your running and that sort of thing. So perhaps, this seems like a good point to ask you that now. Obviously, that lady had a massive impact on you.
I mean, I think if it wasn't for Janie, she kind of opened up my eyes to how easy running was and how accessible it was. It's one of the things that drew me to running was the fact that it was just so simple. All I needed was a pair of running shoes and I could just go anywhere. And that's completely changed my life now because, I mean, if I travel so much, it doesn't matter as long as I just, I can always find a park or even like just a city block to like run around. As long as I'm, running and moving, I'm kind of doing some sort of exploration. And so she just like, and she's been through a ton herself. I mean, I've had some crazy injuries myself. And so has Janie, and she's always been able to like find a way to like get back to what she loves. And she's taught me a lot about what priority means and prioritizing something that is important to you. And it's not a matter of sacrificing something that like other things. It's about prioritizing you, yourself, your goals first, and to like believing in yourself and what you want to accomplish and not kind of ever giving up on yourself. And she taught me that to stay strong with, if it's like training for a race, but also you know, if you're dealing with injuries and setbacks, like from the time that I knew Janie, you know, she had torn both hamstrings and she was like, you know, 53 at the time. And then, you know, she recovered, and then she was competing in, she does Ironmans now. And then she was, you know, she qualified for Kona like the next year. Like she's just the epitome of strength and determination. So she was a huge influence. And then, I mean, my current coach right now, I mean, I met him literally at my first 50-mile race. This was in 2000 and, was it in 2014? Maybe, I think so. It was either 2014 or 2015. I believe it's 2014. It was the, what's it called? The Bighorn 50-mile race in Wyoming. And I remember like meeting this guy. He was also from Boulder, where I lived, and like, you know, I was camping and he was there, and he was like super serious. Like he like was asking me what my goals are, and I was like, oh my God, like no one's asked me this before. Like I'm just here to run the race. Like I literally think I told him, I was like, well, I think my boyfriend told me that, you know, I could run this time, like, cause you know, he's done these before, and he thinks I'm pretty fit. So he thinks I could run this time. It was about like 9 hours. So I was like, if everything goes well, I think I could run 9 hours. And he looks at me, he's like, you know, that's the course record, right? And I was like, I don't know. Like he just said that I could do this. Like, so I'm just here because, you know, I've never run in Wyoming, seemed fun. Like, I don't know what happens after 30 miles. Like maybe I'm going to explode. We'll see. And then I was like, yeah, but I just want to finish. Like it'll be fine. And so then at the finish line, and Adam is like, yeah, I have this goal. Like I want to break the course record. Like he was very serious. And I kind of thought to myself, I was like, damn, like, all right, people do take this sport seriously. Like I'm just here for fun. Like what's going on? And then at the finish line, of course, fast forward, I end up winning the race, and I ended up running 8 hours and 52 minutes, which set the course record. And I finished the course. Of course, it wasn't like all like sunshine and rainbows, but it was pretty hard, you know, but my legs didn't fall off. Like it was fine. But as I crossed the finishing chute, there's a guy like keeled over in the finishing. I think he's about to throw up or something like this. And it was Adam, my coach, who, like, you know, I just met the day. I was like, oh, we have a rough day. And he had literally just finished like maybe a minute or something before me. So that was the budding of our friendship and relationship. And ever since then, Adam is now my coach. I've been working with him. We've been friends, you know, for 5 years, but he's been my coach for about 2. But he's taught me something about goal setting and approaching something, like realizing my potential, and instead of just treating it like fun, like he helps me balance fun, but then also like, you know, being a little bit more serious so I can get like the most out of my training. So yeah.
It's good, like you say, it's so good to keep the fun, isn't it, and the love of it, and remember how lucky, you know, you are to be doing this thing that you love. So trying to understand your motivations for you know, being an ultra runner and running these long distances, which to some people seems completely, you know, ridiculous. What motivated you to try it and to get into ultra running, and what drives you to continue to keep pushing forward? Are you one of these people that, you know, is keen to see how far you can go and, you know, what your limits are? What is it that drives you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, at first when I got into running, I had no idea that ultra running was even a sport. Like I heard that people, like I had just been able to run 20-mile runs on the road, which I thought were hard enough. And so like to like do my first 20-mile run on a trail, oh my God, I remember it vividly. And I was like, okay, like, you know, I was like, it was a feat, and it felt different than running 20 miles on the road. So I approached it very methodically, like very methodically. I wanted to make sure that I could do the long distance. Like I suffered from like burnout pretty hard in tennis. And it was to the point where I loved the sport so much, but then I just didn't even want to walk on a tennis court anymore. And so I didn't want that to happen with running. And so I really approached it from just an adventure side of things. And I wanted to run just because I loved it so much. And it brought me to really cool places. I got to explore. I started like running, and at the time I met my boyfriend at the time, and he kind of opened up this world to me about like what it would be to like you know, like what I did when I was a kid, like travel around the US camping, but this time travel around the US and like go on different run adventures. And I think the byproduct of that is I got really fit. And so I, you know, showed up to these races and did pretty well. But like when it took the step to the next level of running professionally with the North Face, I mean, I wanted it to take it seriously. But I didn't want to be burned out. And so I think I just have a really healthy balance of balancing adventure and doing these races because they motivate me, whether it's a cool course or a cool location that I've never been before. I would literally pick races of like, whoa, I've never been to Andorra. I've never been to Spain at this part of the Pyrenees. Like, it'd be super cool to run this course. And so and then I would take it seriously. And obviously, like, I'm a very methodical, scientific, like logical person. So I'd really, really prepare myself well for these races. You know, do workouts, talk with my coach, but then also like still keep it fun, because if it ever came to a point where like I didn't want to run because I didn't want to do this workout, like then that's not the point of it for me. Like running for me has never been, like I want to be the best that I can be, but running for me has never been about being the best in the world, because there's always going to be someone better, you know, on a specific day. Like maybe I have like the best race of my life and like have a super good performance, but like, you know, I don't do it for the performance. I don't do it to win. I don't do it for sponsors. I only do it for myself. And if I prepare well and I'm in love with the process of training for a big goal and how it feels to be scared and like really want to do well and push yourself, like I'm in it to learn about myself and like how I can become a better person. And I think I run because like I'm in love with the process of it, the day-to-day training. And the races are kind of a fun celebration, and like, you know, anything can happen during, you know, one day at one particular time. And for me, that matters less than being able to kind of enjoy the process to get there. And so that perspective just helps me to stay motivated on a daily basis to keep training and then keep picking races that excite me. Like, it wasn't until this past year, 2019, that I ran my longest race ever. And that was after suffering some terrible injuries when doctors said I would never run again at the elite level. And I ran TDS, which was 145K, and gained about 9,100 meters. Super gnarly. And I placed second, and some people would be like, oh, are you upset like if you didn't win? Because I only finished maybe 10 minutes behind the first lady. Like, we were battling it out all day. But like that, it was such a great race. Like, it was awesome. Like, we left it all out there. It was my first time doing that. And like those, like, yeah, that was just so cool. So it's just, I keep on dreaming about, you know, different events that make me excited. And I think the approach leading up to it is like, if you have that balance, it just always seems like new. So.
And what you said about, you know, what you learn about yourself, and, you know, what then changes the way you approach other areas of your life. It's unbelievable, isn't it, really? Yeah. The next question I'm going to ask you actually is about challenges. And I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of people might know that one of probably your biggest challenge so far, in 2017, you fell 150 feet off a ridgeline during a race and suffered, like you say, you know, catastrophic injuries, really. You nearly died. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it changed your mindset and the way you go about things now?
Yeah, so that race, it was basically Tromsø Sky Race. It was in Norway. I picked that race because I'd never been to Norway, and I'd wanted to, you know, go that far north and explore this countryside. And yeah, like that moment changed my life. Like, falling, of course, like a near-death experience is traumatic in itself. So there's a lot of like mental work that I'm still like working through, you know, like certain terrain or races that I just don't want to do, or certain things I just like kind of say, okay, no, like maybe not today. But I learned an immense amount about myself. Like, one of the greatest gifts that I got from suffering from all of those injuries. I mean, I broke 14 bones, and like my back, both arms, both feet, like ribs, like I was a mess. I couldn't walk for 3 months. But one of the major injuries was this ligament fracture in my foot. And ligaments take a super long time to heal. And it was called a Liz Franck injury. It's basically a contributing ligament to the arch of your foot, which is like, you know, like that's the spring that helps you run. So it was a pretty substantial injury. And my doctor was very frank, like, look, like this is a foot changing injury. Like you might run again, like jogging, but she's like, you need to take like elite running off the table. Like you're not going to run again. And it was kind of at that point where I was like left to decide my future and if I wanted to try. And certainly like, you know, maybe I have more limitations now, or my running has changed a little bit. I've been able to incorporate more cross training. Like that's one benefit. Like I've discovered gravel biking, which is like, oh my God, it's so amazing. I love it so much. But the other thing, it was just enduring those hardships. Like I probably hit some of the greatest lows of my entire life at that point, like wishing the accident had killed me, like, because it seemed easier than to have to face the day-to-day challenges of like not being able to take care of myself, to drive, to like cook myself food, like to like dress myself. And then even after I could walk, to be constantly in pain. And, but with all those hardships and like dealing with them and problem solving, sometimes on an hour by hour basis, you know, other times on a day to day, week, month at a time. It allowed me to show myself what I'm made of, and like that I like giving myself permission to endure that hardship. It showed me that I can deal with hard things and that I'm stronger. I'm stronger than I thought. There's certainly a point where I was like, well, this sucks. Like, I just want to give up and quit. But there was something inside of me that even though I would sometimes think that and feel that way, I never would let myself do it just because I couldn't. But instead I'd give myself permission to kind of feel sorry for myself and feel in the dumps. And then I'd be like, all right, now it's time to do something. Like, do what you can today to like make it until tomorrow. And that's a piece of the puzzle that you've completed. Like, you've done your work for today. Like, now let's move on. And I think if I've laid enough of those puzzle pieces down, like it creates a picture. And so, like now with hardships, it's like, I know that I can kind of like tell myself, okay, like you've got this, like you can do this. You can get yourself through hard situations and figure out a solution. And, yeah, like I think that's from anything. That's from a race if things go south in a race, but that's also just in like other hardships if injuries come up, or, you know, hard situations in life with the job, anything. It's like, I mean, even after I made a full recovery and was racing at the elite level again, I broke my ankle in 2019, like in January, like the end of January. And I mean, everyone was like, oh, like you've dealt with worse, but I was like, man, I was like, it just in the dumps. I remember when I was sitting on the side of the road, knowing that I'd broken my ankle, knowing that I would have like what was about to happen. Like, you know, I didn't know if I had surgery, but like just knowing I was injured again, I remember just like sobbing, like ugly cries, sobbing on the side of the road. And just saying, I don't know if I could do this again, you know, but like, it's the hardships that I've been through have taught me like, okay, like, yeah, you can feel those feelings, but like, you are never going to give up on yourself. And you know that you can find a way through, even if it's the most challenging and difficult thing. And I think giving yourself permission to feel the grief and the sadness, but then also just having that unyielding belief in yourself that, okay, like I can do this. It might be so hard right now and I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I will find it. And like the other huge piece of it was, I got to like literally by taking running off the table, like I didn't know if I would ever compete again. It was beautiful because when I started running and I wanted to try again, I wasn't running for anyone else. I got to fall in love with running all over again and have it just be mine and not run for a sponsor, not care, like having to totally let go of the fact that I would be this elite runner and find my way in a sport that I loved. And that was a really fortunate thing that came of all of those things.
Oh, that's, yeah, so one of the questions that I always like to ask is about mental strategies for, getting through a race when you're when you're really in a dark place and in a pain cave. And I guess for you now, you've been through worse than this. It's got to be the
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because it's so hard, because even if I'm like, I was definitely in some like rough spots in TDS, like I was like crying, I was just like, oh, like this is, and I literally just said to my crew as I like walked by, let's be real, it was really steep where I was not running, but I was just like, okay, I was like, it's time to cry now, as I'm like hiking past, and I'm just like, I feel like crap. But like the point is like, I think really is like, okay, like I'm totally allowed to feel that way. It's a super tough race. Like I know I could tell myself, like I don't actually tell myself like, oh, you've been through worse, because sometimes that can make me feel bad, like, oh, like you've been through worse, like you shouldn't be feeling this way now. But like what I say is I just say like, okay, keep moving forward. Like this sucks right now, you're having a hard time, like cool, like cry while you're eating a cracker, like let's keep going. Like so it's like, okay, like just find a way for forward progress. Like and even at that time, like I was in second place at that point, and like I think Audrey had like a 10-minute gap or something on me, but like I was crying and I was like moving up this climb, I didn't give up, and by the time I was at the top of this climb, like literally I'd closed the gap by within a minute, and we finished like 20 seconds at this aid station, before she ran away again. But still, like it's like it shows me that like, okay, like you can still be, feeling like crap and crying, but like I'm not about to give up. So it's just like that relentless forward progress. Like I always tell myself to problem solve, like stay calm and problem solve. Like nothing is the end of the world. It's just another problem to tackle.
Yeah. And over the course of your career, of your ultra running, what have been some of the biggest mistakes that you've made?
So yes, let's see. So I think, but before the accident, but like this big race, like I remember I was racing for the wrong reasons. Like I had entered this race and I knew I was fit. Like I was pretty new into sponsored running. It was like 2016, so my second year with the North Face, and I wanted to like prove I was like, what, like worth it. And I think or I was like meant to be here. It was like one of the world championships of skyrunning. And I think I was running for the wrong reasons. Like I wanted to, like my idea of a successful day out there was like if I placed like top 3, because I knew based on like, who was out there, how I've been doing the season, like that was doable. And I had a bad race. Like I had like stomach issues, like from like 50K, this was like a 110 kilometer race. And like my race kind of fell apart early on, but there was something out there. Again, I didn't quit, but I'm so glad I didn't. But like, I wanted to quit because I wasn't in a certain position. And to me, I kind of like slapped myself, like, in the face, like, like when I was out there on the trail, like feeling sorry for myself. I was like, well, Hillary, like you should just quit. Cause what are people going to think of you if you don't like, win or like podium or blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I literally like was talking to myself on the trail. I was like, Hillary, stop it. Like, why are you out here? Like, you're out here to run, and you're out here to like, this is why you love running. Like, this is a hard course. Like, quit it. Like, if you are running for a certain place, then you shouldn't have even started this race. And so I kind of just like, I don't know, just told myself to buck up and like run, because you want to be there and you want this challenge. Like, it was my first 100K race. I didn't know what was like, how it was going to go. And I kept on going, and I spent like, I would not recommend this, but like, maybe I would, I'm not sure, because like it was just miserable. Like that race took me like 17 hours to finish. And for like the majority of it, probably 10 hours, I could only sip on like salt water. Like like water with a little bit of electrolytes in it, because if anything else would just make me sick. But I would not give up. And my parents had came out there to support me, and they were crewing me. That was one reason why I couldn't. Like, my mom was like, every time I walked into an aid station, she was like, oh my God, is she okay? Like, is she gonna die? But like, I'd reach for my trekking poles and like get back out there. And I am so glad I didn't quit, because I learned so much about myself, and I learned the real reason about why I should run and why I should start on the start line. And for me, it's less about the competition and less about a place. It's more about like the internal journey and like the course to get there. And the crazy thing is that once I kind of like let off that pressure, like I finished 5th, and like I was able to like, you know, move my way up the field again. And like, and I think it was like, you know, correlated with how much I was like, you know, believing in myself, or just like how much like I, you know, had kind of let go of this position of, you know, of finishing and what a number kind of meant for my worth as an athlete or a person. So that was a really big lesson. Let's see, I don't know, besides like for mistakes, I think before the injury, all the injuries from Tromsø, I think some of my other like bigger mistakes were not recognizing injuries early on and like trying to keep pushing through them and or running through them. But for me, that's like not really worth it. It's you know, like, you know, getting with the PT early and, you know, staying strong on your strength work. And then also, you know, varying it up throughout the year of, you know, breaking it up like with different sports, or taking breaks. Thankfully, I mean, I haven't really had, I've learned that maybe through other people and like through my coach, basically taking off seasons. Like I don't like to race year round. So that's really important for me to keep like a mental, have a mental break more than a physical one, because I'll be super active in the winter. It's just I'm not racing. But that's important for me because it takes a lot of mental prep, I think, to prep yourself for these races. So
yeah, definitely. Like, and I think a lot of people say that it's the brain that needs a rest as well as their body in their off season.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a favorite race type and distance now? What would you say is your favorite?
You know, that's a really hard question. I mean, one of my favorite races, obviously I've like gone back there like 3 years or something, the Cortina Trail race, just because the Dolomites are just like magical. They're just a magical place. And I've had some pretty like good success there coming back from injuries. But that's a 50K. I would just say like, as far as style, just like definitely some sort of elevation gain. Like I really just like, I like it. Like I like it, especially like late in a race, like when people have maybe started out too hard and they start to like die on the climbs. And I'm like, excuse me, like I'd like to keep going. No, not like in a jerk kind of way, but like I really do like it. I just really like the uphills and like the grind and like, yeah, it's so great. So the steeper, the better, I would say. Maybe not so like ridgy or technical as Tromsø, but you know, there's plenty of races that aren't like, you know, you don't have to scramble to run. I'd rather do that like on a training day. I really like to move that way in the mountains, but just maybe not on a race. But I'm doing my first 100 miler this year, UTMB. And well, TDS is almost 100 miles, is like, you know, like 92 or something like this. So I feel like I was pretty close, but I kind of do really like those longer distances because you have time to kind of like, I mean, things could totally hit the wall and like, you know, you could just fall apart, but it's cool because you also have the opportunity to like have a bad moment and then problem solve and come back. So that's really cool to me. And yeah, I actually really like stage races. I did a couple of those actually, like in training, but also just I did Trans Rockies 2018, and I did a stage race last year on my gravel bike. So I think maybe like a Trans Alpine like in the future or something like this. But I don't know, like in the 50 mile, like the 80K distance is just awesome as well. Like I've had some good successes there. I don't know. I just think it has to be, for me, it's definitely all about the course. Like it could be like a 40K or like 67K or something, but like the course is, I think, a driving factor. And if it's like challenging and mountainous, like, yeah, I just like that.
and have you grown to love the downhill now, or?
I have. Yeah, it's fun, especially if things are like clicking, so you can like, you know, it feels like a little dance and stuff like that. I think even like with my proprioception of just like breaking my ankle and then, you know, the foot injury, it's something that I'm still working on. Like sometimes it can be frustrating if I don't like necessarily feel my foot like I used to. Like like the proprioception of it there was nerve damage, and, you know, every time you have a surgery, it's, you know, it's damaged. So sometimes that can be frustrating, but it's cool because then I can, you know, learn how to like move differently on the trail, or, yeah, I mean, but it's like, it's always good to have things to improve upon. But yeah, it's definitely something that I've grown to love and gotten better at over the years. So
yeah. Something nice about it, isn't there? It's like being like a kid again, the runnable bits when it's downhill, isn't it? You feel that,
yeah, I know.
Can you give us a quick rundown of the main pieces of clothing and gear you rely on, things you wouldn't be without?
Oh yeah, so you mean in like a race kit or just day to day?
Well, both. Yeah, both.
Yeah, so let's see. So basically, I mean, it changes from season to season, but basically I have one thing that I actually really like running with. I think they're super comfortable, are the running packs, because for me, I don't really like to run with a bottle because I like to have my hands free, especially if I have to like power hike, which you put your hands on your knees, or like scramble, like, so I have to use my hands. Also, if you're using trekking poles, like, you know, you have something in your hand, so you can't necessarily use that. So a pack is like, a running pack is awesome because, like, even if I'm just carrying like a jacket or my phone, like I keep it in there. So for me on a day-to-day, it's like, if I'm going for a longer run, obviously I don't bring my running pack on kind of the shorter, like 2-hour range runs. Yeah, so a running pack, like usually when I'm going to the mountains, no matter if it's like hot in the city, if I'm going up an elevation, I always bring a jacket. Like just a light windbreaker, because you never know if, like, I'm from Colorado, and I mean, storms can move in really fast. And, so like that's basically has saved my life in, like, you know, in my hands and in a pinch. It's like one of those lightweight running jackets, because they're kind of like a paper bag, because they're not really that breathable, but the point is just to keep your body heat in. And so then like a light pair of gloves, because that helps a lot. And then, yeah, obviously my running shoes, my running watch. Like if I'm in a new place, like I travel a lot, I always download like a route onto my watch, and so I can kind of follow it along. And then if I'm in a new place, like I have my phone with like the map on it. And if I'm really like out in the wilderness, like I'll have like a spot tracker, like a GPS thing, so I can, so that's really more important, definitely in the United States, because you can kind of be 50 miles from the nearest person. In Europe, it's a bit, there's a bit more accessible, like you're closer to a town, but still, I think it's important to have those things if you're out like for a long period of time, or having some sort of, basically like a tracking device, like to know where you are and have someone else know where you are. But yeah, so it's basically something like that, like always some sort of layer. My gear is primarily from the North Face, so that's usually who I use for like my jackets and like the buffs that I wear. I always really like a buff. If it's cold, I usually have it on my head, but if it's hot, I usually have it on my wrist so I can like wipe the sweat if it's super humid. Yeah, and obviously running shoes, running watch. I'm a pretty like simple person, but then in my pack it would be water and snacks. Because snacks are very important.
Yes, they are.
And then, I mean, any like layering obviously is just like kind of weather dependent. But always, it might sound silly, but even in the summertime, and I'm running like maybe down below, like if I'm out for a long day and I'm going up an elevation, like even if I start with running with my shirt off, like 2 minutes in, I still have a jacket in my pack, because I think it's like, yeah, it's a really important piece of equipment to be prepared when you're kind of going up an elevation, because things are different, like, you know, 6,000 feet above where you are starting.
And it's really miserable being cold, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and cold hands.
One of those things like where you feel like, oh my God, like I've done that on the bike before, and I'm just like, oh my God, am I gonna die? Like I just feel like this is awful. And then you get the screaming barfies, and like, it is horrible. But then there's also something enjoy like that I enjoy out of it, like taking a hot shower after you're really cold.
Yeah, I do think to myself, you know, when I'm really cold on a mountain or whatever, you know that getting home and getting warm and dry is going to feel so good.
Yeah, so it makes you stronger.
Yeah, and it makes you appreciate the fact that you've got a lovely warm house to come home to, and you know.
Exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that 2020 is going to see you undertake your first 100-mile event. What else are you going to be doing in 2020?
Yeah, so in 2020, last year when I broke my ankle, I discovered gravel bike riding because it's a way for me to like ride a bike, still maintain fitness, but do something different than running and not be on the roads. So gravel biking is big in the US because there's a ton of just like county roads, non-paved, not so much traffic. So I did my first bike race last year. It was called the Dirty Kansas. It's a 200-mile gravel bike race in Kansas. And you'd think like, okay, Kansas in the United States, it's just like another square state in the West-ish. And it looks pretty flat. Well, the gravel roads in Kansas are gnarly. Like there were people on mountain bikes. I had no idea. Like I had literally been riding a bike for 2 months and I was like, yeah, sweet, I'm going to do this. Like I can be on a bike for a long time. I mean, I did it, but it was like I was gripped the whole time. And so you would say, well, why, Hillary, are you going to do it again? Because it was so much fun and it was like a new challenge and I love riding my bike and it's such a cool way to supplement my training. And you can go so much further on a bike. Like I went 200 miles in like 14 hours. That's awesome. And so basically next year this year, it's 2020, sorry, still not used to it. This year I'm going to, like in the springtime, I've got 2 gravel bike races planned. Because one of my sponsors, Saris, they do bike trainers, that's actually really nice in the wintertime, so I don't have to get the screaming barfies. But so I'm going to do Rasputitsa, which is a race in Vermont. Rasputitsa means mud season in Russian. So it's going to be gnarly. So I've picked another nice one. We're basically 100K of probably mud and snow. So mental toughness is also what I'm training for in 2020. And then I've got an early season 50-mile race planned in my hometown of Fort Collins, Colorado. I've gone to this race to spectate several times, never actually competed in it. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm doing Dirty Kansas again. And in there, I'm like, there's some really cool, like, I love running in the United States because there's so many adventures you could do. I'm planning to do the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim, just with a group of friends, like not for any like record or anything, but just to do it for fun. And then I'll travel back to Europe and UTMB will be my A race, but I think I'll have some other races like leading up to there. I'm planning to do like a stage race in Germany. It's called 4 Trails. This might be like a late addition to the schedule, but like just as a training, it'd be fun. It's about 25K a day for 4 days. And then maybe iKOR Trail to prepare for UTMB, and then UTMB. And then we'll kind of see what goes on after that. I've actually, another big thing that's happening this year is, I wrote a book. So that actually happened last year. It takes a long time to write a book.
I was going to say, actually, when you were talking about your injury, you need to write a book. There we are.
No, so yeah. I did. Because with all of the things that I was dealing with, it's like, it's great to talk to people and have my coach and people I can talk, and like my physical therapist and people I can trust in. But for me, a lot of the recovery, I needed to write it down. And for me, like, I just realized I was like writing all of this stuff. And so I pitched the idea to a publishing company, and I spent all of last year kind of like brainstorming and writing this book. And so, it's going to come out the August 25th, so the week of UTMB. And then I'll be traveling back to the United States to do kind of like a book tour with different events, like through running events. Like I'm planning to go to Run the Rut. It's a sky race in Montana that North Face is sponsoring. And so just kind of like, mix travel with running and book tour. And so that's happening like later in the season. And then I'll see exactly what happens for racing later in the season. If I feel recovered, maybe I'll do another race. I've always wanted to do Ultra Trail Cape Town. But yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. We'll look forward to reading the book. Long term, do you have any, sort of long-term overarching goals, things that you'd like to achieve, with your running and during your career?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it constantly changes, and I kind of let myself dream and evolve. I think definitely races that I want to do, something that's like why doing UTMB is going to be a cool endeavor, is because eventually I'd like to do a race like Hard Rock. I mean, I think that completely plays to my strengths, and it's just such a cool course, and I love how it's organized. And you're like held responsible for like knowing the course and, you know, taking care of yourself. Other races, like, you know, I would really love to race in Japan. So like Mount Fuji, on my bucket list is, you know, Transalpine. So of course I have like goals like that. But I think overarching goals as far as just myself as an athlete, yeah, I want to use these races to push myself. But I think if anything, like the injury has taught me to be, like, I want to be an ambassador for the sport, not only for women, but for people in general, for the sport of trail running to help it grow, but also just to encourage people that you can do hard things if you're willing to just endure a little bit of suffering. And I think that runners get that, because it's like, that's why you feel so accomplished. That's why you get the runner's high, because like every run is not completely easy, but you feel accomplished because you've accomplished some sort of a goal. But like, yeah, like, but I think that's easy to do when you're like moving and like, and running. But I also think that it's sometimes hard to apply to other aspects of life. And if I can be like an advocate or an example of that in the running world, but also just in other, in other aspects of life, and just encourage people to do hard things. Yeah, that's kind of where I see my role as an athlete, and like going, after competition or even during. So, yeah, and I mean, and I am a teacher too. So like, I always love that aspect of teaching, and I'm also a coach too. So like, that's always something I try to say to my athletes who I coach. And so I think giving back to the community in some way, like through coaching, but also through like what I just explained, I think that is where I see like a purpose in running.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I can't remember. I think it's in the Barkley Marathons, one of the documentaries about that, and one of the guys says, everyone could do with a little bit more suffering in their lives. It would benefit most people to.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I have this thing, like, maybe you're gonna think I'm weird, but I have this. I think like people are too soft. Like we just need to like be a little bit more hard. Like, and I think running has taught me that. Like, it doesn't have to be easy. And in fact, the things that I've accomplished in life, like, I think the hardest things in life are those that are worth doing the most.
Yeah. And
I've heard people say this before, but it's so true. And it's almost like, I've also heard someone like, do you know the company IKEA? It's, it's like they make, like, obviously, I'm pretty sure like, but still, it's like these things, if I like build a table or like build a bed or like something like out of IKEA that like I've made, I love that thing so much more than like this other chair that I bought from like a garage sale, is because like I made it. Like I was frustrating. There were times where I was like, what is this PC? Like there's no hole for PC, but then you find it and like you made this thing, and there's like the labor of love to make something, and then you end up loving it even more, even if it's a shitty chair. Like it doesn't matter. Like I think that's the whole idea behind that.
Yeah.
The suffering makes it worth it.
Yeah. Appreciation and gratitude. But yeah. Okay, I'd like to just spend a little time now talking about your training. So if we think about the 2019 North Face Endurance Challenge Chile 80, which you went on to win, how do you begin to get ready for a race like that? What did your training look like before that race?
For the 80K, so I was actually recovering from TDS. Like I definitely took some downtime before that, and then for me, so the Chile 80K was a little bit later in my season, so I was definitely using some fitness that I had from the races before. But for longer races, I usually do like early on, if I'm getting into it, like I don't just start like with a super heavy training volume right away. Like I usually start with, I'll take a rest day every week or every 10 days, kind of depending on my training block. But usually I do well with like higher volume of running. and with like 1 day of intensity a week. Like I don't come from a background of like track running, so I'm not really used to doing 2 intensity days a week, and that can maybe cause more issues for me. So I usually get my intensity with longer efforts. So basically if I'm running for, 3 hours with like lots of hills versus doing a 1 hour like tempo run, I would get more benefit, and I'm prone to less injuries if I do kind of the longer run as opposed to like another speed day. And then like a workout day would maybe look like some sort of like hill repeat. And that's kind of different on the train. Like sometimes I do them on the road if I just want to work on speed and turnover. Other times I do them on a trail, and sometimes I do them on the steep trail where I'm literally just like hiking.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on the race I'm working for. TDS, the hill repeats maybe look more like steep, but for a race like TNF Chile, they're more runnable trails because that race was a bit flatter. Anything compared to TDS is flat. But yeah, so something like that. That's generally the closer I get to the race, like kind of the more volume I do to make sure that I can actually withstand the training load. And then yeah, I always do a really good taper because like those races are their energy, like they cost a lot of energy, so you need to also, like I say before a race, like guard the psyche. So that means like just to not run as much, but then also it's like keeping me mentally fresh and ready to do the race.
Yeah. And do you incorporate any specific sort of strength training within your, when you're training for a race?
Yeah. And I guess I didn't mention cycling either. Like I use cycling like sometimes if I'm like supplemental. So sometimes I'll use cycling to after a workout, like have a recovery spin, like that's always really nice. Or I'll like, ride my bike to the trailhead and then use it because I have a spin out after a long run. Like that's perfect. Or like on a certain day, if I'm feeling kind of beat up, like I'll do a long bike ride instead of a longer run. So that's always incorporated. But yeah, definitely strength training. I think in the off season, I'll do a little bit more like with more weights. But in the on season, yes, like there's just like a little routine that I do. It's not very much. It's just like, single leg squats just with body weight and like a series of like lunges, and just like I have this little band that I can put around my feet to do monster walks and to do kind of like adductor work so that I keep my glute medius like strong on both sides. So it's really important for mountain running. So, but anything like in the on season, it's in the like racing season, it's just like it's no weight, but like more body weight strength exercises.
Yeah. And now thinking about race day on the Challenge Chile 80K, which obviously you won, how did it all go perfectly? Can you tell us about the race?
Do you mean last year? Because I've run it twice.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So last year. Yeah. No, it did not go perfectly. It was a huge change from the TDS. So TDS I trained for, it was super steep, super technical. Like basically anytime I went uphill, it was just like this. So you're just like, you just hike. And TNF Chile this year was really runnable. Like there was a section where you hit the 50K mark and you have 18 kilometers of a climb, I'll use air quotes, of a climb that climbs 1,000 meters in 18K. Okay, that is so runnable. It's so runnable. And then on the other side, it's just this like steep drop off. So I was just like, like my stubborn self, I was like, no, like you cannot walk this. Like this is not hikeable terrain. Like you have to run this. And so like I was just like, playing these games in my mind to be like, okay, like how long could I like not look at my watch and like, like just like count down to like play games so like you would figure out how long a mile would go by. And then and actually early in that race I felt like crap. Like it was such a cool race because we started, the motto was like run from the mountains to the city, and we started at this Sierra Nevada, which means like snowy range. So we basically were up high at like 10,000 feet. and then we did some climbing, and then we ran down to the city. Like, so it was net downhill, but still we gained about like 10,000 feet over the course of the day. And so like, that's not like my super strength, but I was still like running fast, and it was like a technical train. But I just wasn't feeling that great at the beginning. I felt like kind of nauseous, like sick to my stomach. And I realized like I basically had a low-grade fever. Like, and then I got really sick after the race. And actually the first 50K, like I think I ate one like Skratch Lab gummies thing, which is not that much and like not enough. Because like I just, like my nutrition, I just wasn't feeling, it was because I was like kind of getting sick. And I remember like on that climb, there was one aid station. So like I did stop, and I was just like, oh my God, like I need broth. And like, cause like they had this like chicken noodle soup broth, and I've never eaten that during a race, but it like sounded so good. And so I was just like listening to my body and like, okay, like this is what you want. So you're going to stop and eat some broth. And then like, you know, I was able to like eat that for the rest of the way. But no, it was definitely, in my opinion, it was kind of a junk show. Like I was a little bit like, it was totally different race from TDS. It was painful in a totally different way just because it was so runnable. But again, like that's also kind of the fun of it. Like I was really proud of myself. I won, and I was 5th person overall. So that was really cool. So I still had a very strong performance, but there are many times in it where I was just like, what are you doing? Like, Hillary, this is like you didn't prepare for this. Like, but yeah, like I just tried to keep problem solving. But I don't know if like any race has really gone, like if I've had like a perfect race. Like, there's always been something that like has happened, but like that's kind of the fun of it. Maybe it's worth it because maybe it's like meant to be imperfect, and like that is what you know racing and ultra is about. But I don't know. Yeah, TDS is definitely not perfect. Like I fell within the first 50K, like on literally the least technical part of the whole entire run. Like I stayed upright like during the night when I was like running through a riverbed, but like I fell in the first like 25K when literally there was nothing to fall on. Like I have no idea if I tripped on myself. Like I don't know. But
it's so lovely to hear an elite say, you know, you were looking at your watch thinking how much, you know, I'll see if I can not look at it, and then it'll be like the rest of us do. You look and you think, oh God, it's only been 5 minutes.
I know, like sometimes I was like, are you serious? I've gone 0.2 miles? Like, geez.
Yeah, I
love
that. I love that. Okay, now, is there anything that you do now to aid your recovery to make sure that you recover well after races and make sure that you give your body the best chance to repair?
So I think for me, I mean, it's really hard because I think like it's really funny that a lot of people, I mean, myself included, like after you do a race, you're like, okay, well, what's next? And I think for me, it's really important to celebrate like the accomplishment and what you just did, and taking some downtime to kind of like reflect. For me, it's a lot of like, it's mentally reflecting as well as like physical recovery. Like writing in my journal, or just like, you know, like really like thanking your body and yourself for like, you know, getting yourself through this hard event. I think that's really important. Obviously eating a bunch of good food, because it's like, you're just so hungry after a race. And especially those races that require, that require sleep deprivation, like running through the night, like definitely just be lazy, like, you know, and having like nothing on the schedule. Like I don't have plans to run, you know, for a couple weeks after a race, and I will only run or do activity if it sounds appealing, because I think like mentally, like if your motivation is there and like, but you feel like, oh God, I need to like get out there for a run and like do this, like no, like you don't have to, like giving yourself permission to just take a break. And I think that you can even do that in the middle of the season. Like I remember I set the record at Speedgoat 50K, took an entire week off of no running whatsoever, just did yoga. And then I like placed 3rd at the rut, like, you know, or like they won sky like Flagstaff Sky Race. Like like a month later or something like this. So it's really important to be able to do those things and gauge it off of, for me, motivation tells a huge story, tells you a lot. If your body's ready, if you're like physically also rested and mentally ready to get back out there again. But yeah, for me, it's like food, sleep, laughs with like friends and family, and like reflection. I think that's like the best recipe for recovery.
Yeah, let your brain have a rest too.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we sort of come to the end of the session, what do you believe are 3 characteristics that are needed to be successful in ultra running?
Okay, let's see. I think a good attitude is number 1. And I say good attitude because like you want to be there, you want to do this race, you're excited to do it. And if you want to be there, that means that you want to be at the start line, but you want to get to the finish line. And so that means that you'll be able to problem solve with all the crap that's going to be thrown your way. So to have a positive attitude, like throughout the suffering or anything like that, I think for me is number 1. Number 2 is a good nutrition strategy, because these longer races definitely like start to be like an eating contest, a drinking contest more than like a running contest. Yeah. And then the third, I think, is just to be as well prepared as you can be. Obviously like the training, and like do your training and be confident in that, and like show up on race days like as prepared as you can be, like whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah.
So
and if you could give your younger self one piece of advice related to running, what would it be?
Just enjoy it. Just like have like, I think the accident definitely taught me that the hard way, but just to not take yourself too seriously, and like this stuff matters because it matters to you and it doesn't matter to anyone else. Running is just running, like, and I think in that there lies a lot of freedom, and it releases pressure, and it's just there to live your best life and to enjoy life as much as you can.
Yeah, that's good advice. Okay, and if there are any of our audience watching who are considering entering their first ultra marathon, just starting out, what would be a piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say if you need help with motivation or you don't know where to start, like get a coach. Like that's something that really helped me. Like I really like having a coach because I don't have to worry about like what I have to do. Like he is going to help me prepare for it. So that's my first piece of advice. But like just have fun and pick something that challenges you. Find the resources that help you accomplish that goal. Like learn as much as you can, and like just start running. Like it might be scary, but that's not a reason to not do it. So like, yeah, I think just try, and by trying, like you're gonna do it. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think like taking the first step and just like getting into it is a huge first step. And yeah, just like treat it as like just start exploring. Like I think, yeah, that's the best advice I have. Just start running and see where it takes you.
Yeah. And then the final question was going to actually be for anybody who's watching who is an established ultra runner and is looking to sort of take their running to the next level. I was going to ask you what your advice would be for them. So I guess the advice about a coach would probably be the same. If you haven't got one, it might be something you want to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's for definitely, like that's another one that I would say, because I mean, yeah, coach, like that's what helped me like get to the next level, is like, and a coach could look different, like join a running group or join like, have a training partner, like find someone that wants to support your goals and surround yourself with those people. I think like that's the best advice. And that could be a coach, or that could be, yeah, like a running group, or like, yeah, some training partner. But then I think like, yeah, if they're an established ultra runner and they have these big goals, it can be elite or it can be not, but just believe in yourself. And, like it's the priority versus sacrifice. It's like prioritizing something that is important to you. So really that then there are no sacrifices, because you're just prioritizing something. So it's just like a matter of perspective with that.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yep.
I think that just about brings us to the end. Thank you so much for joining us today, Hilary. We'll add all the links below so that people can follow you and see your journey and see what 2020 brings, and buy the book, of course, which is coming out this year. I'm going to really look forward to reading that. So thank you everybody for watching, and thank you, Hilary. It was really interesting.